I've met a lot of crazy Croats over the years, and some of them had the most bizarre ideas and stuff. But the day I heard that there were two Croats that planned to drive a Tesla across the Sahara Desert to become the first people ever to drive an electric vehicle across the Sahara, I thought I'd met two complete nutcases. And in fact, I had. And so a few years ago, I was with Sasa Cvetojevic, who's a very prominent entrepreneur here, and Oleg Mastruko, who is also an entrepreneur and a travel writer. And they had this idea that they would take Sasa's Tesla on the Budapest to Bamako Rally, which goes from the Hungarian capital all the way through the desert to Gambia. They would do it with a Tesla, and they would become the first people to do an electric car across the Sahara. So when I heard about this, I interviewed them, and so I'll put a link there in the description for you to see that interview if you're interested. They invited me to join them on the trip, not all the way to the Sahara, which would have been fun, but just to come to Budapest for the start. So we drove from Zagreb, and I was sitting in the back listening to these guys, and I wasn't even sure that they were qualified enough to get out of Hungary, never mind to get across the Sahara. And I was genuinely a little bit afraid for them, because I thought, although they were enthusiastic, I wasn't quite sure that they'd done enough planning. And then when I got to Budapest for the opening of the rally, it was very, very spectacular. It was a great event. The Tesla was definitely the most admired car of all the crazy cars that were there for the race. They also had a backup car, which I didn't realize, and this was a guy called Thomas, who's not on Facebook, so Thomas bez Sasa. And he was Czech, I think, and he had a backup car with a generator, and so off they went together. It was a phenomenal trip. I was watching on Facebook, and they were posting every single day. Oleg was doing great travel updates and so on. Of course, they got stuck in the sand because they went to go and look at something and went off-road, and then they had to dig themselves out. They had a whole number of amazing adventures on there, and a lot of bureaucracy. Trying to get through African countries with an electric car was quite a challenge. Finding places where they could get electricity and get people to understand exactly what it was that they wanted, because nobody had ever seen a Tesla in that part of the world before. And finally, after I don't know how many days, but they managed to actually cross the Sahara and come into Bamako, where they were welcomed as heroes. And a little footnote, it took Sasha, I think, about 3 months to get his car back, because then he had to re-export a Tesla from Gambia back to Croatia. And because that had never been done before, and I think there was quite a lot of sand in the car as well, which didn't really help with the electrics, he was without his car for about 3 or 4 months, I think. Phenomenal achievement. And so things that Croatia does better or before other people: crossing the Sahara in an electric car. Nuts.